Hello, welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Pride and Prejudice. Chapter 23, Happy Endings. The next day, Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy came to Longbourn. Mrs. Bingley suggested a walk for the foursome. Bingley and Jane lagged behind, eager to be alone. When Elizabeth and Darcy had rounded the corner out of hearing the others, she spoke. Mr. Darcy, I must thank you for your kindness to Lydia. I must have been anxious to tell you how grateful I am. I thank you on behalf of myself and my family. Thank me only for yourself, he replied. I thought only of you. Elizabeth was too embarrassed to reply. After a short pause, Darcy added, You must know that my feelings for you are just the same as before. Have you changed your mind about me? Will you marry me? I love you very much. Yes, I have changed my mind about you. I think we could be very happy together. And yes, I want so much to marry you. The happiness her reply produced in Darcy was wonderful. He spent the next few moments telling her how delightful he was. He soon learned that his aunt had spoken to him about how stubborn Elizabeth had been. It taught me to hope, he said. I thought I still might have a chance with you. We both have changed, she smiled. We are both more kind, more understanding of each other. You know, he added, I was tortured by how you refused me last spring. At first, I was angry. Then I realized you were right about me. That's why I wrote you that letter. Did it make you think better of me? It did. It helped remove my prejudice about you. But please don't torture yourself any longer, she said. Think only of past memories giving you pleasure. I wish I was more like you. I have been selfish all my life, he admitted. My parents taught me what was right, but I followed those principles only in my pride. I was spoiled and cared for no one beyond my family circle, and to think less of others. I might still be that if it wasn't for you. I know you were different from that moment I saw you at Pemberley. Did you speak to Mr. Bingley? Is that why he rushed to see Jane? I did, and as soon as I realized how much in love he was, I made good past my mistake. You know the rest. They talked and laughed until they reached the house. In the hall, they parted. That night, she told Jane everything. But I thought you disliked Mr. Darcy, Jane exclaimed. Then Elizabeth explained how she gradually came to appreciate all the good qualities of Mr. Darcy. She told Jane how deep and strong her love was for him. Jane was delighted with Elizabeth's happiness. I am proud to call him my brother, she said. The two talked into the night, wondering how their parents, who disliked Darcy, would take the news of their engagement. Indeed, the very next evening, Darcy sought a private meeting with Mr. Bennet. He emerged after a few minutes with a smile on his face. He wants to see you, he whispered to Elizabeth, who was sitting nervously at the table. She hurried to meet her father, who was stunned by the news. Lizzie, what are you doing? Are you out of your mind? I thought you have always hated this man. Elizabeth was quick to assure her beloved father that her attachment to Mr. Darcy was deep and real. Or do you mean you are determined to have him? He is rich, to be sure, but will he make you happy? We all know him to be a proud, unpleasant sort of person. But if you truly like him, that changes everything. I do like him, she replied with tears in her eyes. I love him. He has no improper pride. You do not know what he is really like. She went on in earnest, explaining the gradual change that occurred. To complete the favorable impression she made, she told her father all that Mr. Darcy had voluntarily done for Lydia. This is an evening of wonders, so Darcy did all that, made up the match, gave the money, paid the fellow's debts, and got him his compassion. So much better. It will save me a world of trouble. I still have to repay your uncle. Now I'll offer to repay him, and he'll refuse, content to rant on about his love for you. Her father grinned, his eyes twinkling. I had no idea, he continued. He is a good, honorable man. In that case, he deserved you. I could not have parted with you anyone less worthy. But I have no idea how your mother will receive the news, he said, throwing up his hands. Elizabeth hoped for the best. When her mother went to her bedroom, her daughter followed. Darcy has asked me to marry him, and I have accepted, she blurted that out quickly. Mrs. Bennet sat down, unable to utter a syllable. Her daughter feared the worst. Then her mother exploded with joy. Lord bless me, Mr. Darcy, how rich and great you will be, Lizzie. What jewels, what carriages. That was all Elizabeth needed to hear. Her spirit rose. Mrs. Bennet stood in awe of her intended son-in-law, so she did not even venture to speak to him. She treated him with such respect and held her tongue. Mr. Bennet made great efforts to know Darcy. Elizabeth was delighted with their friendliness. Until the wedding, Darcy was a daily visitor at Longbourn. They sat for hours discussing their unusual courtship and how they had come to realize how much they loved each other. The lovers discussed in great detail every conversation they ever had. "How did you ever fall in love with me? Did you admire my spirit?" Elizabeth asked him playfully one day. "I admire the liveliness of your mind," Darcy admitted. "Tell the truth," she laughed. "You were disgusted with the women who were always agreeing with your opinion. I interested you because I was unlike them." The two went on like that for hours, totally absorbed in each other. All the months of hostility and anger were forgotten in their newfound devotion. In a few weeks' time, the Bennets had ample cause for celebration. Their two eldest daughters, Jane and Elizabeth, were married. Miss Bennet's most fervent wish to see her daughters married of wealth and high social standing was realized. Elizabeth moved to Derbyshire to become the mistress of Pemberley, Darcy's elegant country estate. Mr. Bennet missed his daughter tremendously. He often went to Pemberley, especially when least expected. Mr. Bingley and Jane remained at Netherfield for a year, and then decided they were too close to her mother. Even Bingley's easy disposition and Jane's kind heart could not cope with Mrs. Bennet's constant interference. Instead, he bought an estate near Derbyshire so Jane and Elizabeth could visit regularly. Pemberley was also the home of Georgiana, Darcy's sister, and the attachment between her and Elizabeth was strong. The young girl was amazed at how her sister-in-law spoke to her brother. Elizabeth was lively and confident in her own opinions. She gently helped Georgiana realize that a woman may express herself freely with her husband when their union is grounded in love and respect. The two women became the very best of friends. Georgiana had lived a very quiet life with few friends of her own. Her usual companion, the governess, had accompanied her everywhere. There was not a great difference in age between the two sisters-in-law, and the one was as eager to learn as the other was to teach. For Elizabeth, having Georgiana at Pemberley made it being so far from her own younger sisters, and she had to admit to herself Georgiana was a great deal easier to handle than her flighty sisters had ever been. Elizabeth knew that in observing her marriage to Darcy, the younger woman was learning how good the right marriage could be for both partners. Elizabeth hoped that when the time came, Georgiana could choose the right man and for the right reason. She knew she could best guide her by providing the proper example herself. "No, not by myself," Elizabeth corrected herself gently and with a smile. "By our example, Darcy's and mine." "It's just as I had hoped it would be," Elizabeth told Darcy one night as they sat together at Pemberley in front of a roaring fire. "I know we shall be happy forever," she said, kissing him softly on the cheek. "We are a true marriage of hearts and minds." And that is the end of Pride and Prejudice. Thank you all for listening. Goodbye.